All right, so thanks so much for joining us. We have Lemuria Carter here from Virginia Commonwealth University, and then also Jochen Scholl, who's here from University of Washington's iSchool. So we're going to start off by just asking you to describe the kind of research you do and where you work, a little bit about your department.
Sure. Hello, my name is Lemuria Carter. I am the department chair at Virginia Commonwealth University School of Business Information Systems Department. I am an associate professor and the chair there, and I joined in July, so I'm still new to this community. I'm very excited to be a part of Virginia Commonwealth University. Go Rams! My research is in e-government. In particular, I usually focus on technology adoption and citizen perceptions of e-government services and how views of their trust in the government or trust in technology impact citizens' willingness to adopt electronic government services. I'm also interested in the role that technology plays on society. So most of my research is managerial and behavioral, and it really looks at how technology impacts society and how the government interacts with citizens and how citizens engage with government agencies.
Wonderful, very valuable work.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Jochen Scholl. I'm, as you mentioned, at the iSchool, the Information School at the University of Washington. And my research in electronic government focuses on smart cities, smart government, which is the next phase in electronic government research. Technology is being used ever so more comprehensively and smartly, and that needs to be studied. Another very important area of my research revolves around disaster science and disaster studies. Government plays a big role in when responding to disasters, and the area in which I live, Seattle, is a fairly potentially compromised area in terms of all kinds of hazards, including things like magnitude 9.5 earthquakes, tsunamis, lahars, flooding, landslides. And one of my research actually that we are in the process of finishing up now is on the Oso landslide, which was the deadliest in US history, which just happened a little over a year and a half ago. And I also study information artifacts and evaluate them comparatively. That involves all kinds of artifacts, websites, mobile apps, and we can have, and that is not tied to electronic government necessarily.
Okay. When I hear smart cities, I feel like sometimes it's used in different contexts. It's a very hot buzzword, not only in academia, but also among governments, from municipal governments all the way up to national and even internationally. So when you say smart cities, what exactly do you mean by that?
You echo a concern that I had with the term. By the way, I also 15 years ago had with the term of electronic government. It's not a scientific term, and so we needed to give it some meaning. Smart government means basically that citizens can be more involved, that transactions can be done in seamless ways with government in the way people are used to do that with commercial firms. But it also refers to the inner workings of government. Government is the holder and owner of the largest amount of data that we have. And by definition, at least in the United States, all this data is public, except for some military and other secrets that need to be protected in their own right. Now, making all this data available, bringing it to use, including commercial use, that is where we look into smart government. Smart government also entails things like, if you look at your utility bill, And in many municipalities, the government provides utilities, like in Seattle. You want to use your energy smartly, and you can do that with modern technology. And governments are improving that. Also traffic control. So it spans a wide range of technology applications, and we are studying how you best can leverage that.
Do you use the term smart cities and smart government interchangeably?
Yeah, well, I do. I make three distinctions actually. The smart city is the urban space or urban environment, which is a particular case, but it is part of smart government. We also, and that is a new discussion in our field, look at smart governance, because with the change of the administration through smarter technology, smarter processes, we also look at some governance situations. For example, the founding fathers, for a reason, implemented a system of checks and balances. Now, what we do with technologies, including smart technologies, we are bringing together things that the founding fathers thought we should be separated, right? So we are also looking into some problematic areas. Also, smart technologies open the back door to attacks that we had never seen before. You know, if you have smart networks with sensors and what have you, that can be tampered with. So we have some things to do in this area.
And you mentioned smart governance, but we already had the term e-governance around. What's the difference between e-governance and smart governance?
That would now cost me about 10 minutes to answer. But let me give you the gist of it. It's trying to bring together the traditional constitutional ways of government and the implication the new technology brings and the changes. So we want to maintain the basic idea that we don't want to be controlled by Big Brother or by government in mean ways. So we want to maintain the elements of the Constitution. On the other hand, we want to take advantage of the smartness of the technology. Yeah, and this is a balancing act, and this needs to be studied, and it's different from e-governance.
Don't let me
No,
hijack your interview.
you're doing a good job.
We haven't had this conversation.
This is exactly what we want, right?
So before you mentioned the emergence of data and how much data is available and how it's prevalent and how government agencies, private sector, everybody's trying to take advantage of data. But yet we want to preserve some of those checks and balances and things that we value in our Constitution, especially here in the U.S. So given the emergence of big data and data management and data being integrated into everything, is it possible to still protect some of those core values of privacy and autonomy and not having Big Brother watch us? I mean, is there a such thing as privacy anymore in this age of data?
Well, the moment you hit the public street, you know, you're no longer private.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to rethink this concept. Interestingly, the concept of privacy is not part of the U.S. Constitution, as you may remember. Judge Brandeis, former Supreme Court in 1890, said privacy is the right to be left alone, but it's not a constitutional right, and it's a right in at least competition or tension with the right to know. Yeah, and I believe there is an increasing, if you'll also look into the terrorist landscape, there is a right to know for the public. You know, we have cases where the public is not informed of what is going on. We have some terrorist cases in Europe as we speak. We have some crimes being committed, and some administrations in Europe chose not to inform their citizens. I believe there is no privacy, or there should be no privacy for people who commit crimes. They should be known to the public, and that is the right to know. This privacy right is also in competition with other rights, you know, such as the First Amendment. You're speaking your mind, being informed or informing.
So But I would argue that most people value some level of privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's probably a cultural norm in the States that we say we should be protected from Big Brother and from being constantly monitored. Yet, as technology advances, we kind of forget that and we share more information.
That's what I'm telling my kids all the time. If you go on Instagram and Facebook and share your intimate or quasi-intimate information, don't be surprised if in 10 years somebody asks you a few questions that you don't expect.
And then what are the implications for protecting your identity, given this mountain of information that's available?
Yeah, and if you look at government collects so much information. We did back in 1996, we did a little very casual, not a systematic investigation in New York State, how much data New York State agencies collect about citizens. We came at 118 items, detailed items, 118. Now, they are not joined, they are not put together yet. But you can do that technically. It's not a big problem,
create
actually.
a profile of every citizen.
Yeah, exactly.
And what is the agency doing to make sure that information is secure and protected?
That's the next big frontier and challenge. And some agencies are better in that regard than others. Now, talking about privacy, there's something where we can do also things by legislation, and that is, I'll give you an example. I got notice of a case, it's actually already 10 years ago or so, where somebody who took a loan from a bank to treat his cancer got this loan canceled by the bank because they found out about the condition. And there's something where it becomes really, really fishy that so much information is available. And we need to think through how we deal with situations like that. And I would say that is also a frontier of our research. So one other problem is actually that legislation is lagging, increasingly lagging. You know, if we look what we have in the courts now in terms of cases on cyber crime and so on, we are talking about cases of 9, 10, 12 years ago. We all know what that means in terms of how much crime and the capability of cyber capability of crime has increased ever since. All these are areas where we have to look into. And then let me say this one thing here, and that is we always look at the positive effects of what we are doing. I have always said we also need to study the darker side to understand how we can prevent that. And we are really bad at that. This is not only true for smart governance or government and for electronic government, to use the older term from the 1990s. By the way, we need to discuss whether we want to keep the name electronic government rather change that maybe at one point.
What would the new name be?
Well, that needs to be a community discussion, but we can start that among us.
Start discussion, yeah.
I did it once. I renamed it in the early days to Information Technology and the Public Sector.
It's long.
It's too long, and submissions dropped. I learned that lesson fairly quickly.
I mean, and I think e-government is universal. It's known.
Yeah. It's a label. It's a branding.
I think we would lose something if we changed it.
That is exactly.
These are some of the background decisions that are being made, right. At the track. I did want to get in a little bit of time to talk about the e-government track itself at HICSS, and the kind of research that you guys have been seeing, and also whether or not there have been some direct implications on governments. What are the practical implications of some of the research that you have seen in the eGov track?
I'll let you start yours.
So we have 12 tracks. Actually, we had initially 13 proposed. One received, and that indicates also where we do forefront stuff, received too few submissions. So we had to drop it for this year, and that was e-justice and e-law, which is a very new, interesting area of research. But that is a little bit too much of the forefront. We were also one of the first who looked into what does cloud computing mean for government? Something like 9 years or so ago. We looked into big data earlier than anybody else. We are also on the forefront in terms of cybersecurity. We do some stuff there that is very, very interesting for the security and homeland security communities. We do research in disasters. That's my own field of expertise, in which we try to understand how situational awareness, once a disaster has occurred, can be improved more quickly, because that is one of the biggest problems. If you think of Hurricane Katrina or our also mudslide in 2014 or Superstorm Sandy in 2012, it took first responders, well-trained people, sometimes days to understand what really had happened. The sooner they know that, the sooner they can direct resources to where they are most needed, the more they can protect lives, save lives, protect further damage. Very practical implications. And that is what we are doing. I'm personally working with responders in the Seattle and Washington State areas with FEMA Region 10. And we are going to conduct a major exercise this June, which I will also not only prepare, but also then study the outcomes of, to see what we can also practically do to make this window smaller until people who want to respond and need to respond have exact, accurate, timely information.
And then in addition to the mini tracks, we also have the symposia for eGovernment. So this year we had 2 half-day symposia, one on realizing the promise of social media in the public sector, and the other on smart cities. And those were very successful. Frequently, we have both practitioners and researchers who participate in those sessions, and we have a lot of engaging discussion that informs both the research community and practitioners. We've had CIOs participate in our symposia. We've had government managers. So it's a really good opportunity for the community.
You invited state CIOs.
Yeah, we've
Lemuria.
had the state CIO from Mississippi. We've had government representatives from Hawaii, the CIO for Honolulu at the time.
And the state CIO?
State CIO, a manager of eHawaii.gov. So yeah, we definitely value the blend of research and practice and making sure that our research is relevant to the community.
And in terms of that topic, choosing the relevance of social media right now, the implications of social media in government, what are you seeing in that body of research?
So it varies a little bit depending on the region. So this year we had a representative from Mexico, from China, and from Spain to talk about social media adoption in the public sector in each of their regions. And I think one of the emerging themes or trends was the importance of communication and understanding and developing an effective communication strategy around social media. And in many of their localities, it wasn't the government officials or the technology lead that managed the social media. It was usually a communications person that viewed social media as another viable form of communication for the government agency. That was one emerging thing.
Yeah, well, the social media, government, we discussed that during the symposium, as you remember. First of all, social media are private platforms, right? So government had to think about, can we do that? Because government information is something you have to rely on. You have to rely that nobody has the authority to take it down or away, right? Now, I believe that most governments that we see so far uses social media in a billboard fashion. They put out information that they normally put out on their websites. They also put it out on Twitter. They put it on Instagram, Facebook, what have you. And so it's a one-way street still. If you look at the followers or the numbers of followers, there is quite some resonance. So that is seen and heard and read and used. Now, the more complicated question is for which areas can you use, for example, mobile apps, if you include them into social media, which is not completely correct, but let's take that example for the moment. Then you can do some targeted things. And I give you an example. We are in King County, which is where Seattle is the major metropolitan hub. We are just introducing a mobile app that was developed by the neighboring Pierce County, and it's called First to See. It's a disaster app. So what you get as a responder, if the power is still up, if the catastrophe is not too big, you can expect that citizens send you very detailed information, including geolocations, including pictures. So if a bridge went down or something else of the infrastructure is damaged, they can take pictures, use this app. It's directly going to the Situation Room and including the geolocation. And the more of that kind of solid information you get, all of a sudden, you, instead of 30, 50 spotters, you have 100,000 feelers and spotters that give you precise information. And here technology shows you, or we can demonstrate by that as long as power and connectivity in a catastrophe is still there, you can get solid information much more quickly and can react on that then.
And I think that's really useful information for governments too, because you mentioned precision of information.
Exactly.
So all of this info, all of these pictures and things could be coming in, but a government may or may not know what cues to pay attention to in terms of determining accuracy. And so if any of the research can inform the level of accuracy of the information coming in, that could have really great benefits.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to ask about too is, in terms of using mobile applications for disaster situations, are there any are there dark sides to that? Are there any negatives to that you can?
Well, information is like music. It can be used for almost any purpose. That's a very general, almost evasive answer. But yes, and that refers to what I said earlier. We need to also pay attention to potential misuses of information. For example, if you have the cell phones out, you can track cell phones, as we know. I mean, we know that the NSA is doing that to protect the nation. But here is an area where some people, particularly outside the United States, even become a little hysterical. Now, I do not believe that the NSA is doing something unconstitutional here, but the potential, the technical potential, would be there, and that is what Snowden referred to. Yes, the potential is there. Yeah, whether it's used that way, we need to find out, but that's a different story. Research should be, first of all, interested in how technology and new processes and procedures, new apps can help. We then have to figure out whether it's always used the way it was intended to use.
Great answer, thank you. I did want to talk a little bit about your research as well. You mentioned earlier that you do research on teens and texting while driving.
Yes.
And I was wondering, if you could talk a little bit about that as well.
Sure. So in general, I'm interested on how technology impacts people and then how it impacts society as a whole. So I had an opportunity to work on a funded proposal for the Department of Transportation to explore ways to discourage teenagers from texting while driving. And so we pulled literature from the criminology field, and we looked at personality traits. We looked at teens' views of sanctions or punishments, and their views of protection motivation and protecting themselves from threats, and how those all work together to discourage them from engaging in this risky behavior. So we've just collected the data and we're in the preliminary analysis phases, but we have found preliminary evidence that personality type and fear of punishment and fear of being susceptible to a threat will impact whether or not a teen chooses to text while driving. And of course, this is a societal issue. It's greater than just teens. Unfortunately, a
Right.
lot of demographics actually text while driving. So we're really excited about exploring the data and then sharing this information with the Department of Transportation so that hopefully the department can develop campaigns that are really successful at reaching teens and discouraging them. So how can we craft a message that is more likely to be effective at discouraging teens from texting while driving? And then ultimately, can we extrapolate that out to the population at large? So again, my interest is with technology and how it impacts society. I'm very interested in working on things that have a broader impact on society as a whole. And I think that's one of the things that's really cool about e-government research. Unlike some areas of technology that are really esoteric, with e-government, I mean, anybody, most people can see how it could benefit them or how it's relevant to them, and it's really exciting to be a part of this community.